Hi everybody, Matt Lawton here, and this is the Astrological Winds channel, and I'm going to take a look at the astrological weather report for the week of May 1st through 7th, and it's the merry, merry month of May, named after the goddess Princess Maya. Happy Beltane, cross quarter day. Very interesting energy with that, with our full moon and lunar eclipse this week, which is one of the three things I want to talk about this week. And just in case you missed it, last week I did the monthly report for May also. And so there's like things that you may have missed on a bigger scale for May that I'm not going to repeat in detail during the weekly reports this month. So you may want to go back and check that out if you didn't get a chance to. And in fact, today is a very good reason, number one, because today is the day, Monday, May 1st, that Pluto goes retrograde, and I'm not going to go back into detail on that. I talked about it last week. So anyway, first off, the Astrological Winds channel is a free video blog that I do on YouTube. So if you have a YouTube account, you can become a follower. And if you do become a follower, turn on your notifications, and that'll you'll know, you'll get a notification whenever I post a blog, which is usually Mondays anyway, sometimes some other times. It's also available on all kinds of podcasts. The video mainly is just me talking to the camera most of the time, so there's really no need to actually, see that. And the podcast can be a more freeing way of being able to listen to the blog when you're doing other things like driving or, doing some exercising or something. So anyway, just look up Astrological Winds channel on your favorite podcast. It is distributed through Buzzsprout, and it's available on multiple podcasts. So if you don't see it on one, just try it on another. And remember, it is a free service. So what I do request is that people pass the link along when they're done with the blog to someone else that you think might be interested in astrology. And remember, that's over half the world now that has an interest in astrology. So, it's not some big thing to do that. And also, I am a professional astrologer. So if you need, or someone needs a professional reading, please contact me and we can discuss setting that up. And that's at matthue823 at gmail.com. That is matthue823 at gmail.com. And I'll have some more details at the end for anyone who's interested in that stuff. So there is 4 things that are pretty big things this week. The first one, like I said, Pluto goes retrograde today, and I'm not really going to go back through Pluto goes retrograde. That will require you going back to last week's blog and listening to the May monthly thing. But it is the retrograde season has started up. Mercury's been retrograde now for about 9 days, and so and it's right in the middle of that. And that's actually one of the other things I wanted to talk about is today. Mercury retrograde in Taurus is conjunct the sun, and so that is what we call the inferior conjunction, when Mercury and Sun get together. And normally, when it's not the inferior conjunction, when it's the superior conjunction, that's when it's one of those right times to start new things, like new businesses, new ideas, new things that you want to communicate out to the world that are very important to you. One thing to remember about Sun Mercury conjunctions, either way, is they're very subjective. Okay, our intellect, our mind is very focused on our own thing, and we're not the best receivers at this time, and that's why you see in the inferior conjunction is always right in the middle of the Mercury retrograde period. Remember, Mercury retrograde, one of its main attributes is that we don't communicate as well. Well, that's because when we get this Sun inferior conjunction of Mercury in the middle of the Mercury retrograde, we're so engrossed in our own things, and a lot of that has to do with a lot of the things going on in the world affecting us that are awry. Like I've said before, the life through the astrology forces us every 3 months to have a Mercury retrograde for 3 weeks to really reassess everything that's been going on in the 3 months before that. It's like almost creating a library system for what's gone on, and like making sure that you're getting the things that are important information, once again Mercury information, to you. So like, here's a situation where when it get it is very subjective, therefore, and then when we get to this point in the middle of the Mercury retrograde, it becomes part of the reason that the communication is not functioning so well. And it's interesting, this Mercury retrograde in Taurus so far, I always think it's really interesting to observe the way Mercury retrogrades manifest in our lives and in world events, even based on the sign and the elements that the Mercury retrograde is in, the element of that sign. And in this year is Earth sign, so it's Taurus. Remember, every year it's mainly one element that Mercury retrograde, the 3 Mercury retrogrades each year are focused on one element. So this year it's Earth stuff. And it's very, to me, it's the Mercury retrograde of this Taurus so far is very much about things like that. It's very much material, physical blockages of things, or what's creating the miscommunication, the information issues, the mobility issues, the inability to get things going issues. And remember, always the thing to do with Mercury retrograde, it's about reforming, reviewing, redoing. It's like not taking on the new. If we can flow with that energy, then we flow really well with it, So it's like reassessing those things. So on this, Taurus, like I said, when Mercury, we did go retrograde in Taurus, is going to make us reassess a lot of stuff about resources and stuff. And that will even continue with our lunar eclipse and full moon in Scorpio, which is one of the big things going on this week too. But remember, this is just going to be a time when we're really, the Sun Mercury inferior conjunction is a lot of inner talk. It's a lot of, what's going on inside us, and talking to ourselves. So like it really is so subjective on that level. and it is good in the sense of like, yes, beginnings, but just as inner stuff still. It's not like going out into the world and pushing something new right now, because then your results are likely not going to be what you expect or hope for. And interestingly enough, too, both the Sun and Mercury retrograde in this conjunction are semi-square Neptune. So that actually adds even another layer of confusion to all of it. I mean, it can put us in a very mystical, spiritual mindset for sure. But we can also see very quickly how the real world is not like in a cooperative zone for that, especially with Taurus energy. It's not really interested in that kind of thing. So like, even though we can get out there with that Neptune a bit ourselves and get some spiritual satisfaction, some maybe inspiration, even, what we're doing inside with our mind and is kind of like disconnected even more from concrete reality, because the Neptune, it's more idealistic, and therefore it's also more self-delusive or full of illusion or fantasy. So not a good week to be making any kind of serious decisions about stuff, because it's just not where what you're not going to get what you expect. All right. So the big event of the week is the second eclipse of the eclipse season, which is now our lunar eclipse, which aligns with the full moon in Scorpio, which will be on Friday. And so it's the sun in Taurus opposite the moon in Scorpio. That's our full moon. And it's actually, the moon is also opposite Mercury retrograde. We just talked how the sun and Mercury retrograde are conjunct. So obviously it's going to be opposite Mercury retrograde too, although it is going away from that aspect at that point. And the ruler of the chart, full moon in Scorpio, means that Mars is pulled in too. And Mars is right now in Cancer, a weak sign, another water sign, incidentally, too, just like the full moon is in a water sign, Scorpio. And it's in a trine. The moon is actually trining or coming to an applying trine to Mars, the ruler of the chart. So that's that's kind of interesting. So first thing, it's a full moon. So full moon, like I've said every month, it's an opposition between the will and the ego, between the conscious energy and the subconscious energy, between our emotions and how we're feeling and our security and where we want to really go, and the things we are striving for, the things we want to act and personally do and make some effect in the world. So here it is on the resource axis. Taurus and Scorpio are the resource axis. Your resources, my resources, society's resources, all those resources. So the sun in Taurus wants stability in resources, wants reliability, wants something solid, wants to know that it's going to get its needs met, that it's going to be comfortable, that that when it opens the refrigerator door, that everything is in there that you want, basically, that's, Taurus. And Taurus, the Taurus energy has a tendency to sweep hard emotional stuff under the rug and replace it with even more material stuff, so those comfort, what we call those comfort things, that help us feel good when emotional stuff is really stressful. And and like I said, Taurus has a lot to do in the zodiac with money, assets, objects, property, and banking, all those things that, physically in our society as it's been created by us, that we need for security, so Taurus's drive is to do that, and it doesn't want to be deflected by deeper stuff. It will, try to push deeper stuff away. And here comes full moon in Scorpio. So first when we get that full moon, it shines the light onto the Taurus energy, so that so therefore creates a lot of shadow too, so that we can see the shadow side of what the price is for stuffing the emotional, deeper issues behind a desire to make sure that we're materially secure first. And so that, the moon in Scorpio is not happy. It's in fall because the emotions are so intense. And they can get very obsessive, and they can get very, very see all the shadow, all the darkness, and can get very, possessive and wanting to manipulate and coerce energy. But it's all about shaking Taurus up to get some kind of emotional reaction, and will create drama to do so, even if it's negative drama. Remember, some of the shadowy side of Scorpio is to, degrade into power struggles, criminal type behavior, shadow world people, and shadow world energy from the psyche, energy from the subconscious, seeing what drives us from the subconscious. So that's what that full moon in Scorpio sees. That, it sees all the fallacies, the shadow of the reality of like trying to create this physical stability and deny the emotional stuff and the deeper drives of what's making us do that. And so it's really trying to wake us up to that. And so, like, there, like everything else, there's two ways to go, and or at least two ways to go. I mean, like, there's two ways at least to look at it, in the sense of like positive, negative. Are we going to get so fearful of not having what we may want that we're going to get into like manipulative power struggles with others, that could include those in power and authorities, and those who live are in the underworld, and can be even threatening to our physical safety if we take it to that level. Or do we want to use this energy to really assess, not only in ourselves, but see in others how, like, the these subconscious stuff that is stuffed under and that we're not consciously aware of is driving us, and kind of get a grip on that, and then start to reform that energy. Now, it's not going to be easy. The Mercury retrograde is going to gonna help the Taurus side of the equation, because Mercury retrograde, Mercury, first of all, is attached to the past a lot of times already, and when it's retrograde and in Taurus, it definitely is going to be attached to the past. It's gonna, and Taurus does have a lot of emotions that are bubbling under the surface. So when you get an opposition of the moon to Mercury in Taurus, it's like, okay, well, you can see how those emotions are affecting how you're thinking and communicating with others. So this is, once again, I'm going to play into that Mercury retrograde stuff of inability to communicate well with others, lots of misunderstandings, because people are operating from models and behaviors based in the past that are emotionally trigger them. Moon opposite Mercury retrograde in Taurus, and they want that stability. That's really, they prefer to push it under the rug again. So it is a difficult little bit of an assignment on that level. But here's the ruler, Mars. Now, first of all, Mars is not in a good condition in Cancer. It's, once again, we're going right back to kind of Taurus and Scorpio energy, water energy, energy that's based on the past, about protecting what's ours and our families and our loved ones. So Mars, when it went into Cancer a week or two ago, I talked about that week, about how I can get very defensive and protective and circle the wagons with those it loves when it gets in Cancer, and then on a bigger level, it can get very nationalistic in a societal level, and really create enemies, basically, to to blame for what it's not getting resource-wise. And, you can see that happening in the world a lot. And so here it is, it's trining. There's applying trine to Mars, the ruler of the chart of the full moon and eclipse. And remember, this is eclipse. This is a lunar eclipse. And the difference between the lunar and the solar eclipse from 2 weeks ago is the lunar eclipse is felt a lot more inside. It's a lot more of an emotional state. But we have to be aware how the power of our emotions can dictate where our thoughts go. And remember, our thoughts create our reality. So we have to be really aware of that circle, in this sense. And so that Mars trine, the Moon Mars trine, can help us, maybe not get too stuck in that Mercury retrograde Taurus, Sun Taurus energy with this eclipse, and not get so stuck on dwelling on that level that we create a reality for ourselves that's very difficult. And like I said, it is a full moon. We know that a lot of events happen in the world and to a lot of people during full moons that are out of the ordinary. They're extreme. People react extremely and regret it, and and world events, and we get a lot, more earthquakes, things like that, even natural events that happen during full moon. So obviously, when it's an eclipse too, it accelerates that even more, and so there is. If you don't get your handle on that, you can be creating with a lunar eclipse a lot of those own issues in your own life. But here, that trine to Mars, I think, can help here, because it does work against some of that stuff. It says, hey, you can channel your energy into something that is very satisfying for you. And it might be something you need to do alone, and especially with a Mercury retrograde going on, but it's not necessarily so. If you can make your drives and ambitions congruent with others, or find ways to do that are creative, then your objectives can be met in like a more give and take fashion, which kind of like can help balance some of that energy that of Taurus, and so it's interesting. I mean, this is like it's another big test, and obviously the lunar eclipse season does create a lot of change for a lot of people, and a lot of change in society. Things shift into different directions, sometimes very rapidly, and that 15th degree is a critical degree. Why is it critical? Because it's literally the middle degree of each season, of each quarter. The 15th degree, each quarter starts on a 0-degree cardinal and ends on the 30th degree immutable. Well, the middle degree is the middle degree of the fixed sign. So it is a super concentrated, focused degree. It's a critical degree. And it's like, like today is Beltane. It's the middle of the season, spring season in the northern hemisphere. And that's what the 15th degree of fixed signs is. It's a cross-quarter degree. It is a very focused, concentrated degree. So we have a lot of power, is my point right now. In this Moon-Mars trine in this chart, the moon applying to the ruler in a trine fashion shows we can use that power and make some really strong advances. And a lot of that might still be more in subtle world psychological stuff, energy type places, subtle type places, but it can be brought out into the real world. But it starts with us first, and finding our own motivation, and then how do we make that congruent with others and in creative ways where everybody's a winner. So it's an interesting journey on that. Okay, last thing I wanted to mention, Venus has a very interesting journey this week too, especially from Thursday through Sunday. So let me get into that for a few minutes and then we'll be done. First off, on Thursday, Venus squares Neptune, getting close to the end of Gemini. So it squares Neptune. And this is, Venus squared Neptune for the most part is pretty sweet, actually. It's very much being into around our loved ones, feeling romantic about life, very inspired and imaginative. And there's this tension, though, too. So, like, on an artistic level, it's actually a very creative, fertile aspect, because there's inspiration and imagination and you want to do something with it. And the same with spiritual paths. It's really good for that too. It's like, feeling really inspired and actually, taking steps to do things. But the problem with Venus Neptune is we can be very unrealistic about relationships, and be very almost too forgiving to the point where we're kidding ourselves about certain relationships. So it's a lot of like almost self-delusion about relationships, and then people not being able to live up to your version of the rose-colored glasses, so that is disappointing to you. So that, is the trap we can fall into. And, on an extreme level, that can actually make us realize that we need to separate from certain people because, our value systems are just so different, and they just can never really live up to where your ideal or standard is. But then, but like I said, for the most part, it is a beautiful, more romantic, abstract way of a day where you can get a lot of imagination and inspiration and have some really sweet times with your loved ones. Then the very next day, on Friday, Venus sextiles Jupiter. And this is really, this is a really interesting one too. Jupiter getting close to the end of Aries, and this is like a really great give and take energy. This is being really optimistic about your loved ones and the people you connect with, your friends, and vice versa, and realizing the opportunities you even have within one another to bring benefit to each other's lives, even material benefit, So it's really good for that. And once again, it's great for socializing. It's on a Friday going right into the weekend, so that's really sweet there, it's a great energy for that too. And also, just like, is a possibility of a harbinger for opportunities for romance. So like, be open to that is what it's saying. It's not necessarily like, oh, I'm actively looking for it, but like, be open to that possibility too. And then on Saturday, Venus switches signs. It goes into Cancer. It joins Mars in Cancer. Now, Venus is much happier in Cancer than Mars is. I mean, Venus is very comfortable in Cancer. Venus loves her loved ones in Cancer. She likes to dote on them. She likes to give. She's very affectionate and giving and loving, and wants to, just share. And it's definitely like, one of those things again that where that Cancer energy can pull in, where if Venus doesn't feel like she's getting what she wants from her loved one, Venus in Cancer is a lot about emotional support. So if you're feeling emotional support from your loved ones, then you will shower them with affection and gifts on all kinds of levels. But if you're not, then you're going to try to manipulate yourself into getting into that position. So if Venus, is feeling that Cancer insecurity of not getting enough, and in her case, enough love, basically, then she will operate to try and manipulate, or get move people around, her loved ones around, to get what she wants. But when she's feeling that emotional support, she is just so uber sweet. And that's how Venus, the goddess, likes to be. So that's why she really likes to be in Cancer. And it's she's just really in that caring mode, and like wanting to spend money on her loved ones, things like that, or on just making the home front more comfortable for herself and her loved ones. So real sweet little switch there. And then on the very immediately, as when Venus goes into Cancer, she sets up a quincunx with Pluto, who's just stationed retrograde at 1 degree of Aquarius. So there's a quincunx there. And that's really interesting, because that is all about learning what we need from people in our lives emotionally, support-wise, and what we don't. So a lot of times it brings people who are very difficult into our lives, that trigger a lot of emotions, and have us kind of go back into our psyche and do an assessment and adjustment, and say to ourselves, oh wow, like, I really don't need people like this in my life, who are like, doing this Pluto thing to me, pushing me around, or whatever, on whatever the level that may be. And then, like, trying to, separate yourself from that. And then other people who are, that you see that you do want a deeper connection with, clearing space out for them to come in and bring you those emotional needs that you weren't getting from the others. When you can recognize that these are the people that are going to bring you those needs. So, very interesting journey for Venus this week, too. All right, that's what I got for this week. A really interesting week. I think, it is going to be a little bit of a, like full moons always are. It's going to be a tough one, and especially with this Mercury retrograde. And I do think a lot of it still, like I said before, has a lot to do with the economy, resources of the world right now, really, affecting all of our lives. And that's that Taurus and Earth sign energy that, we're seeing in this situation right now. All right. And it really is saying to us both that Sun Mercury conjunction and the full moon of needing the emotional stuff that really drives us, needing recognition and reforming things so that part of us is satisfied. All right, this is Matt Lawton. This is the Astrological Winds channel. This is a free service I give every week on YouTube. If you have a YouTube account, please become a follower, turn on your notifications, and you'll know when it's posted. And if you don't have YouTube, and you'd rather hear it another way, it is available on all kinds of podcasts. Just look up Astrological Winds channel on your favorite podcast. If you don't find it on one, check another. It's out there on like 20 of them. It's distributed through Buzzsprout. Also, I do post the link on Instagram. It has Astrological Winds channel does have an Instagram account, and so if you want, become a follower there, and you'll see when that's posted there. And I also do sometimes post additional information during the week, certain days, that just on Instagram, and they're just like they're not audio or video, they're just comment. So sometimes just 20-second reading of something interesting going on that day that I didn't mention in the weekly because it wasn't as big, that you might be missing. So if you have Instagram, check it out, become a follower. And also it is I do have a private Facebook account. I post it there. You have to friend me first. Matthew with 2 T's, Lawton, Lauten. And remember, free service. What I ask of you and everyone is to now find someone in your contact that you haven't passed it on to yet and pass the link on to. And really the best way you guys can support me, though, is I am a professional astrologer. I've been doing readings over 20 years, educated in astrology 7 years formally. Come and get a reading when you feel the need to. If you don't know your natal or birth chart, you really need to get that done. And I'm not talking about like a book you read or your friend dabbling. Really get it done by a professional astrologer, because it'll be very enlightening, and it's what you carry with you your whole life. Every year around your birthday, I highly recommend getting what I call a predictive reading, which is very similar to what I'm doing in this blog. It's your next year, and just looking at it and the energies that are hitting your chart, and how in that way you can feel how you might work best with those energies. And people ask me too, can I do that on small amounts? Yes, we can do monthly. If you need a more detailed monthly predictive reading or a weekly one, those are available too. You just got to let me know a little bit ahead of time. You can't let me know the day of the week starting, hey, I need a weekly, so you got to let me know a week or so ahead of time. But, so yeah, and then if you have a child's charts really revealing best way to act with your, get reactions that you want from your kid, things like that. And also the main events that they're going on in their life, relationship charts. If you just met someone, what brought you together, or if you've been together for a while, what the relationship is developing into and going through. All interesting stuff. Fixed star readings I highly recommend for people who have already had their natal chart done, have a deep understanding of it, and then this gives us more of a deeper soul purpose behind what's going on in our lives. And then election charts, if you have an important thing coming up, highly we can look and get the best chart to make success happen for you. Horror, if you have some burning question you can't make a decision on, sometimes we can look at a chart and get that done. And I also have beginners classes available. I also am available for lectures, classes, question and answer sessions, mini readings, other types of entertainment for your group. All those things, best way to do is just give me an inquiry at mattHue823 That's mattHue823 All right. I will see you guys all next week. We'll look at the second week of May then. And right now, just enjoy this full moon eclipse, and let's see what changes and reformations we want to bring in through this. I'll see you next week.